mind that this is a large, loud moving machine, and most animals are actually quite terrified of us and run for their lives! So you'll need to keep your eyes sharp if you plan to see any wildlife today. We do see mule deer about every other train ride though. We also see their larger cousins, the elk and moose occasionally, although those are more rare. We also do see bears sometimes from the train, but this is usually about once a season, so not very common. And some of the smaller animals you might see include squirrels, chipmunks, rabbits, marmots, foxes, and the occasional coyote. So hopefully we will see something today. Now folks, as we round this curve, if you look on the uphill side of the train, you'll see an old narrow gauge raised rail bed. That old rail bed belonged to the Mineral Belt Railroad, which was one of many railroads to service Leadville's historic mining district with supplies and bring the ore down to Leadville to be processed. The Rails to Trails program, however, has converted the old Mineral Belt Railroad into the Mineral Belt Trail. It is now a 12-mile paved hiking and biking path that encircles the entire city of Leadville, and if you are a hiker or biker, I highly recommend it. It still goes right through Leadville's historic mining district, so you get to see lots of historical features and mines along the way. Now, one of my favorite spots along the Mineral Belt Trail is where two railroad companies had a dispute. The first railroad did not want to allow a second railroad to build a cross-track over their tracks to get to the other side. It's sort of like the old saying, the grass is greener on the other side of the road. Except in this case, the mines are richer on the other side of the tracks. Well, the second railroad was trying to build a cross-track anyway, without permission. This was quite illegal. But the first railroad also responded illegally when they ran a train right through all their work parts and equipment, scattering them to the winds. They then proceeded to park a fully steamed locomotive and several armed guards on the spot, and the second railroad would be forced to negotiate. Eventually, they agreed to build a bridge right over the first railroad's tracks, thus solving their dispute. Golden, Central City, and Blackhawk to decide which one should be the state capital. On August 1st of 1876, Colorado gained its statehood, and they selected Denver by vote to be the state capital for the state. Now, you probably already knew that Denver was the state capital of Colorado, but what you may not have realized is that Leadville lost out on that opportunity by only 2 votes, and they were the second place contender in that race. I think it's pretty crazy to think about how different Leadville would be now if they had selected it to be the state capital back in the 1800s. However, I'm actually quite glad that vote turned out the way it did. I love Leadville's small town flair, and I also think it would be difficult to build a large city here due to our high elevation and mountainous region. In fact, Leadville's official elevation is 10,152 feet above sea level. This does indeed make Leadville the nation's highest incorporated city. At least for a long time. Unfortunately, folks, a few years back, another town in Colorado, and this allows the leaves to wobble side to side very easily, giving them their friendly, happy nature as they wave to everyone that passes them by. That's part of the reason why the aspens are my favorite trees in the area, due to their friendly nature, but also I do appreciate the fact that these trees also do put out sunscreen on their bark. You can use this sunscreen for your skin. Just rub your hands on an aspen tree, and you will get a white powder all over your hands. That's the sunscreen. It has an SPF of about 15. Now, folks, on the downhill side of the train here, you might notice a large area of knocked down pine trees, and you might be wondering what in the world happened to all those poor trees on the downhill side of the train. Well, what happened was an avalanche, a giant snowslide that came tumbling down the mountain here in March of 2019, knocking down just about everything in its path. An avalanche can be quite a destructive force of nature as it carries several hundred tons of snow down the mountain with it and can travel at speeds of up to 85 miles per hour. You definitely do not want to be caught in an avalanche, and it was a mighty good thing that we were not running winter train rides at that time. This was back in March of 2019, and this was before we started running winter operations, but I do want to comfort you all. Now that we do run winter operations, we take avalanche mitigation efforts very seriously, and this does include blasting efforts, and also we would cancel train rides if the avalanche danger were to get out of hand. We definitely do not need converted from narrow gauge to standard gauge in 1943, they decided to fill in all 5 gulches.
Are you up for a family photo? Sure.
This was to make the tracks more maintainable since the footage trails are with a 36-inch distance between the rails. The reason they used narrow gauge originally on this line is because of the narrow gauge engines and train cars can navigate steeper inclines and sharper curves, which can be now. As we do come around this curve, though, this is Bird's Eye Curve, which is the sharpest and longest curve on our entire railroad. This makes it a great photo opportunity to take pictures of the entire train as we round the curve. So everyone, be sure to wave and smile at the other end of the train while they are getting your photo. And also be sure to pull out your camera so you can take photos of them smiling and waving back at you. Now folks, also right here in the Bird's Eye Curve, I'm going to take you photos of the train. There are several interesting things for us to see. Sometimes we see a deer here named John Deere. Also folks, we do get to see a telegraph pole right in the middle of the curve on the downhill side of the train, about 30 feet from the tracks.
That's called roughing it.
And you can see a telegraph pole, not telephone. Also, there's a beautiful small mountain stream here, and looking above us is a great view of Mountain.
Hold on,
and also a large area of dead pine trees that was caused by the forest fire that took place here in 2012. You can see just how close that fire got to our tracks. Now, as we near the end of the curve, also be sure to check out the old stone foundation and the remains of a log cabin on the uphill side. These were the old section houses where the section hands used to live. So if you're trying to hear that Bird's Eye Curve year round. Also note, sometimes our engineer likes to add a little extra horsepower to get through the curve, so you can see him rowing his boat gently down the stream from the cab of the locomotive. Just kidding, guys. But Sean doesn't like to have a bit of fun on our train. Now, folks, just in case you missed the telegraph pole back there in Bird's Eye Curve, there's another one coming up here in just a moment. But when we get there, I want to draw your attention to a very specific feature of the telegraph poles up here, and that is that the top of the vertical poles were cut at an angle. This was because folks back then were geniuses at making things last a long time, and they could cut the top of the pole at an angle and help to prevent the rain and snow from seeping into the log as much. This ultimately helps to prevent rot. The caboose is next to it now. This one's right next to the tracks. Very obvious. It would be pretty hard to miss unless you completely turn around.
Telegraph poles.
It seems that their efforts to make the poles last a long time did work out pretty well. There are still a few poles standing 139 years later after they were put in. Wow. It is now going to pass by. But that being said, the train never stops here. We only park extra railroad equipment to the side here to let the train go past on its daily run. This siding is quite handy for our tractor guys when they are doing maintenance in the middle of the line, as they can just move their equipment to the side and let the train go past and then continue work, rather than having to bring their equipment all the way down to the roundhouse or all the way up to the end of the line to let the train go past. Here on the siding today, we will see a orange railroad slinger, and also a fly train, and a ballast tamper, and a ballast car black light. All of these pieces of railroad equipment are used when they are doing track maintenance, or also a tire remover and extra tread is done right after the tie ring. Our tractor guys are very hardworking bunch of guys. They do all of our tracks sometimes come within 2 feet of the edge, that might be a great time to look to the uphill side of the train. If you do decide to look to the uphill side of the train, there's no shame in that. There are still some interesting things for you to see.
Uh-oh, let's not lean too much.
To see how the trees cling to the cracks of the crevices in the rock wall and somehow find enough water to survive. You might also notice a discoloration on the rocks, which can be black, orange, yellow, or green. This discoloration is a life form known as lichen, and it is a combination between algae and fungus, living in a symbiotic relationship. Now, are you all ready for a wave joke?
Whoa!
The
Look how
algae
high
and the
we
fungus
are.
got together and started liking each other. After all, he was a fun guy. Unfortunately, though, the last time I heard from them, their relationship was over.
Put them on the
Triple punch line and that's pretty long. Of course, on the downhill side of the train, it's not hard to see why this is my favorite spot along the railroad today, with the beautiful panoramic views of the Arkansas River Valley beneath us. And also a great shot of Mount Massive, Colorado's second highest peak, framed nicely between the valley walls to the left. Yes, you did hear me correctly. That tiny little stream down there is in fact the mighty Arkansas River, the 6th longest river in the United States. The Arkansas River is over 1,400 miles long and eventually joins up with the Mississippi.
Oh, it's so small.
Joins up with the Mississippi River outside of
Further down, it gets
However, here we are looking at it. Its headwaters are just a few miles away from here, around a few curves in the
Oh,
valley.
yeah.
Now, the highway down there on the valley
looks like a
fork is
creek
Colorado State Highway 91. It also connects Leadville with the junction of I-70 and Copper Mountain Ski Resort.
Whitewater rafting,
If
yeah.
you look just above the highway, though, you might notice another old narrow rail bed. That old rail bed belonged to the Federal
Get your head out of there.
Denver Rio Grande Railroad, which was actually the first railroad company to reach Leadville back in its mining heyday.
Yeah.
This greatly transformed travel to Leadville for the better, because before the Denver Rio Grande ride, you would have had to come into Leadville on one of 3 of very harsh, rough mountain passes in a horse and buggy, which was a very rough and arduous journey. However, when the railroads arrived, this greatly transformed Leadville travel to for the better, and aboard that very first passenger train into Leadville was a very famous passenger by the name of Ulysses S. Grant, former Civil War general and former president of the United States, and he was on that very first train ride into Leadville. And it just goes to show how big a deal Leadville was back in its mining heyday. However, back in those days, every railroad company in Colorado wanted to run trains to Leadville, and the Denver, South Park, and Pacific Railroad Company was no exception. We are riding on their tracks today. However, they did not initially build their tracks into Leadville at all, but simply asked the Denver and Rio Grande if they could run trains on their tracks into Leadville. The two companies would sign a joint operations agreement, which basically said that the South Park could use the Rio Grande's line into Leadville for a track maintenance fee, if the Rio Grande could use the South Park's line into Denison. The two companies got along quite well for a while. In fact, at one point they even considered merging into a single company. But unfortunately, before this could occur, various disagreements would arise between these two railroad companies, which would end up in legal battles. Part of the dispute was over the track maintenance fees. The South Park Railroad thought they were quite exorbitant, and so they couldn't pay them at all to the Denver Rio Grande, and the Denver Rio Grande would sue them over this. And these legal battles finally made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Rio Grande, and they forced the South Park to pay back all of their unpaid track usage fees. And the South Park wasn't too happy about this, so it was a disagreement they made when the South Park decided it was time to build their own railroad tracks into Leadville, so that they would no longer have to be dependent on the Denver Rio Grande. Successfully operate these tracks until the 1960s, and then they merged with several other railroads to become the Burlington Northern, and the Burlington Northern would then operate these tracks until 1986, and then we purchased them from them in 1987. That brings you to the current date on the various railroads that own these railroad tracks. However, there is a fun story about how we got these railroad tracks from the Denver Rio Grande, which I will have to save for a little later, because for the next mile or so, I have some more interesting things I would like to point out. So I'll tell you more about that later. As we run this curve, be sure to check out the uphill side of the train. One of the most beautiful views on the entire train ride is coming up, with Mount Arkansas looming above us here, and it's a very pretty view, and also the amphitheater, a semicircle of mountains to its right. There's also a beautiful small mountain stream here coming down English Gulch, and it does make for a very pretty photo. On the downhill side of the train, though, be sure to also check out the zip lines strung across English Gulch there. As you can see, those zip lines are
right there in front of you.
up, so it takes a lot of faith to make that leap. That's why they decided to call that zip line the leap of faith. Can you imagine that? However, that is not the only zip line.
Here, come here, let's take a picture.
See up here. You sit.
Oh, that's a big jump. Here, come take a picture. Hi.
Good. Enjoying the ride?
Yes, very much.
Awesome. Howdy.
How you doing?
Doing good? Enjoying the ride?
Loving it.
Awesome. All from 1957 in here.
That's my question is, how'd you get such a cool job?
Knowing the right people. Yep. Being friends with the owners.
I was gonna say that helps in life, period.